Okay, I'm going to show you a few tricks for using Emacs inside of Python. So um, here I've got a simple program, and before I would have come over in the terminal before I knew how to do this. Now I'm going to show you how to run your code directly inside of Emacs. Um, there's a Python menu. If that menu is not appearing, it means you're not in what's called Python mode, and probably because your file is not named correctly. As long as your file is named with a .py when you open it, you'll see Python at the bottom, and you'll know you're in Python mode, and you'll get that lovely menu. There'll be different menus if you were programming in different languages. Okay, when we go to Python, um, they have these things. These are ways to move around the code easily, which are only really helpful if you learn the key commands, which they're showing you. C stands for control, M stands for option. But then down here is what's useful for people still using the mouse. They have this eval. So eval means run, basically run the code. So if I say eval buffer, it's going to take everything that's on the screen, that's what Emacs calls a buffer, and evaluate it. So Control C will run my code. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't show you the results. It says down here, you can see sent, so it did something. It shows you in the mini buffer. You have to change buffers. It opened a new Python buffer, you'll see with the asterisk, and you got to change to that buffer in order to see your code running. And here's my code running. It's telling me your choices are. Apparently my code doesn't yet display a question, so I'll just type something. Oh, Boston. Oh, Boston's incorrect. Well, that's too bad. Lowell. Oh, Lowell's incorrect. Okay, so I got 0 correct. That's a lovely game I've written. Now, if I come back to multi-choice, I can go ahead and take a look at my code and see what's happening. It runs main. It didn't print out a question, which seems like a bummer, so I'm going to now use my code to print the question. All right. And now I don't even have to save to run the code. I can just use Python eval buffer, and that will run it without even saving. It's maybe a little dangerous. And there it says capital of New York. All right, now I at least have a question. New York. New York is incorrect. Oh, bummer. Capital Massachusetts. Boston. Boston is correct. I got 1 correct overall. Lovely. So now my code runs. Emacs makes it easy in addition to switching back and forth with this buffer menu, which, by the way, you change with Control-X-B from the keyboard. It gives you a way to show either what it calls 2 windows at once, which means within what we call a window, what Emacs calls this outer thing a frame, and I'll show you what it calls a window. So if I say new window below, it does this. And that's a windowing system Emacs developed long before there was even anything called like Windows on your computer. So this is a very old and very powerful program. There we go, Python eval buffer, and now I can see it run my code right next to me here. And the capital of New York is actually Albany. Lovely. The other option, for those of you who like to work in 2 windows at a time, is you could shrink this down. I'll go to File, and instead of saying new window, I'm going to say remove other windows, back to 1 window. I could say new frame, which is what Emacs calls what you and I probably call a window. This is the new frame. And here I could switch one of these over to the Python buffer. And I can say eval buffer, and it runs it in this other window. So you can use 2 windows if you prefer, or 2 what? You just have to know that Emacs calls them 2 frames. Okay, very nice. I now have a working piece of code. A last note, Emacs can evaluate just a section of a buffer. So if you're working on, let's say you just want to try out a new piece of code, all right, you can select it like that, and then you can go up to Python and say eval region, which is what it calls a selection, and now it just evaluated that region. You'll notice it didn't do anything because all I did was define a function, but you can now inside this call that function. And we'll see I had an error, and now I could go and figure out what the error was. In this case, I didn't import random. Another useful thing to know is that when you've evaluated a buffer, like I did, you can actually use the functions within it inside of this Python shell. So let's say I've got a function called getUserChoice. I can now type that function in this mini buffer, and there it comes up and displays it. And I can see, oh boy, there's no space there. Maybe I should add this. There we go, add a little prompt, save eval buffer. Oops. You can see I didn't do that properly. Anyway, there you go. So this is a quick introduction to using Emacs for Python. Hope it's helpful.